What up, everybody? How y'all doing? Man, yesterday, woo, man, this is such an emotionally draining day. So I hadn't felt that in so long, just like an all day cry. It was a lot. So thanks if you stuck it out with me. If you're able to watch to the end, I understand if it was honestly just at times maybe something you want to choose to kind of watch in parts because it's just like, oh God, dude, calm down. Maybe it's too much for some people. I get that. Um, just thank you. It means the world to me to be able to honor her. And if you're watching this video, I haven't watched the previous video. Basically, the previous video was me talking about my late wife. And this is kind of a two-part episode because I really felt it necessary to fully separate the good from what is about to be the really terribly bad. And it's the only way I could think of doing this justice and doing her, the right way, because it was just, I didn't want it to all be in one video and for one to taint the other and sully, no, she was special. She was amazing, marvelous, everything. And now we're gonna talk about how it just kind of all, man, came crashing down, and very in such quick succession, and in an unstoppable and impossible way. That's why I call it a miracle, because it was the perfect storm situation. It was insane. It's the only word for it, because it literally is insanity that I was up against. It's wild. But so where we left off yesterday was everything was going well. Joy and I were living in Seattle. I mean, when I say we were doing well, goodness, we had total freedom. I mean, I worked at Waste Management at the Union Pacific Rail Yard, $18 an hour, barely doing anything. It was a great job. I loved that job. I hated coming back to Texas, knowing that I was going to not be able to do that work anymore. Joy was a travel nurse. She was, guys, she was making $3,000 a week. So my paycheck was covering all our needs. Her paycheck was happy fun time. We did whatever the hell we wanted all the time, whenever we wanted. It was amazing. That wasn't the stressful component of what came next. Like we could do anything, and we did a lot of things, and it was a great time. It was an amazing time. But man, leading up to that time, like I've mentioned in previous videos, we were cut off from family and friends. That was unhealthy of us. We should not have done it the way we did. The people pleaser in me couldn't handle perceivably letting everyone down. I didn't let a lot of people down that I felt I did, but that was my baggage. That was my problem. And Joy was a people pleaser. Same thing for her. We both just could not handle feeling like the bad ones. When all of our lives, we had the same situation. She was the angel of her family, and so was I. And that's how we were perceived by everyone. And so it was so hard for both of us to feel like villains and to feel like we had failed everyone. And so us leaving to Seattle, all the way from Texas, just packing up and moving, we got so much resistance, like, please don't. And just something we felt like we had to do. So she needed, as broken and whatever, family's always family. And we need each other, regardless. We can disagree, and we can focus on the things that we agree on and the things that unite us. But family always needs family. Family is always first. And I wish I had really known that to the extent that I do now. But leading up to those, October of that, it might have been 2021. I forget. Frankly, I'm not great with like years and stuff. It was COVID, and if you guys remember, COVID, the very first case of COVID in America was in Seattle. Was in Seattle, Washington. So that's where we were. We were ground zero. And Joy witnessed a lot of, real tragic shit. Like, she saw, families unable to, they could only communicate via tablets. Like, goodbye. Like, couldn't visit people in the hospital. They're dying, and couldn't even visit them. What a terrible time that was. We were locked down, extra tight there. The mask pressure in a liberal city like Seattle was, noticeably, they really were like on it. People were like the police on each other, like it was a stressful time. There was also the Black Lives Matter rallies and pressure. And, if you Google CHOP or Chaz, in Seattle, they set up this block, this little square area. It was a no police zone. The Black Lives Matter thing was in full swing. And it was just like, no police are allowed in here because this is our safe space. And they set up this whole thing, this whole elaborate thing. There was rioting in the city. There was the tension in the air, the stress of the city was palpable. You could feel it. We lived just blocks away from that Chop Chaz area. We could smell tear gas from our balcony. It's quite pungent. It's pretty damn wild to experience. So those were some of the stressors in the air that I believe served as a major catalyst for, like, she started to get really stressed out at work because everyone started wearing these black square things to say Black Lives Matter and all that. And that's good and all, but they kind of turned into this weird, like, hey, you're not wearing your square? Like, what the fuck, and like, so there was a slight aggression, and Joy just didn't feel comfortable, like, one way or the other. She just didn't want to, like, do anything. She wasn't like a cause person, that just wasn't her thing. And we lived in very much a cause city, like Seattle's like people don't talk to each other, but they loudly express their opinion on abortion, like, at the checkout aisle. Like, it's a very strange place. Like, everyone is very cold and they don't talk to each other, but they're very opinionated about the most controversial shit, like, openly. It's a very interesting place. But, so she felt that tension. That was a big piece of stress while we were there. This is major. Listen to what I'm about to say right now. It's not said enough. It's not well known enough. I agree with the legalization of marijuana. It was great in Seattle. I loved just being able to, just like a 7-Eleven store, you show your ID and have a great time, no hangover, no poison. Like, it's not alcohol. You're not literally poisoning your brain and your liver and your gut and your body. You know what I mean? It's not. It's a nice recreational thing that it makes lovemaking better. It makes movies better. It makes, laughter. Like, I almost choked on my tongue, like, from laughing so hard. I mean, it's some of the best experiences. It's a really fun thing. People who are big, like, proponents of marijuana are like, it's only good. It's amazing. And there are no downsides to it. Like, it's only amazing. Like, legalize it everywhere. Like, fucking or else, and like, and it's, one thing that you need to know, particularly if you are genetically predisposed to DID, dissociative identity disorder, or, if you have a family history of schizophrenia, broadly speaking, that's a broad term. But if you have a family history of those types of mental health issues, the the way the body metabolizes THC when eaten is actually different. You actually experience a different high when you ingest marijuana rather than smoking it. I remember the night Joy experienced psychosis very, very vividly. It was very unsettling. She drew a bath and took a couple edibles, which I hardly ever did 20 milligrams. That's, 10 was fine with me. But she took a decent amount of edible weed, which again can serve as a primer, as a catalyst chemically in your brain to make that snap, to make that break. It's possible. So a big part of why I wanted to do this video is to really talk about mental illness, like real mental illness. If I feel like the phrase is thrown out frivolously and it's just like I'm sad sometimes, or I get anxious around crowds. It's like, hey, that's great and all. Like I really do understand that there is there's real mental illness that breaks the mind, that breaks it entirely, that shatters it, and that's the kind of mental illness I want to talk about, and that I want to make people aware of. Notice the signs. Be empathetic. Be understanding. It's not funny. It's not a joke. Hollywood doesn't do it justice. They make it look silly. It's terrifying and awful and tragic, and can also be medically helped. Can also be not cured, unfortunately. I'll get into that. But it can be worked on. You can have a life. You can have a life. And Joy was close to having one. Man. Anyway, she drew a bath, and while she was in the bathtub, she experienced a profoundly vivid, just a visceral hallucination. She said that she could see a family member of hers standing over her, looking at her take a bath with like murderous and terrible intent. And she said she thought that it might be a repressed memory. And over the next few days, she really kind of, she was a nursing professional. She did medical surgical, but she also worked with psych, which was also a real major part of this being so tragic, was because she worked with schizophrenic patients. And she was that's something that she was like, she never wanted to have a stroke, and she never wanted to develop a mental illness like that. It's tragic. So she knew what it looked like and how it could play out, and the dissociative identity disorder. She was drawn to like film and media that kind of like that movie, The Black Swan. It's a Natalie Portman movie. It's a fantastic film, but she was very drawn to that film because it portrayed that disassociation, that other personality, very, very well. There's an anime movie called Perfect Blue that she was fascinated by, and so in retrospect, I saw how she was beginning to be really drawn to these depictions. She wasn't obsessed, but she really was like fascinated by them and curious about that. She had that powerful delusion of that family member standing over her. And as a medical professional, she began kind of working together what might be happening to her, because she just wanted to know what was happening to her. She was freaking out. And the conclusion that she drew was that she must have experienced a repressed memory, and that she must have disassociated as a child, and that must have been what was going on. This happened, and she hid it away because it was too traumatic. That's something the brain does. If you're powerfully traumatized as a child, you can disassociate and repress these memories that may one day awaken and cause hell. She believed that's what was going on, and the nature of her accusation demanded I take it seriously. The person involved in this accusation, not in a million years, could I have personally believed what she was saying to be true. And I just want to take this moment to talk to the Hendrick family. I would have involved you all much more. Much, much more. If her powerful delusion had been that she was abducted by aliens, and those aliens were running experiments on her, and she was terrified. If her powerful delusion had been that she was the next prophet of Jesus Christ, and she was going to be given golden tablets to interpret for the world to understand the newest gospel. If her powerful delusion had been that CIA spooks were around every corner and government officials were listening and tapping all her phone calls and they were following her wherever she was going. If any of those things had been her powerful delusion, it would have been so cut and dry obvious what was going on. But Joy came up with this explanation that if I didn't treat with 1% of possibility it might be true, then it would have been a nightmare. Slowly, Joy began descending, and we we had a major fight, and which led her to want to go back home and be with her family. And during that time, we went back and forth. She wanted to. She finally started thinking, and she was all over the place. But she was like, okay, yeah, let's work on it. Let's do counseling together. She'd been around her family for a little bit and was like, I fucking miss you. And I was like, yeah, I miss you too. I pack up everything for us because we're moving back to Texas. On the drive home, we're driving through Utah. We stop off. We were driving in separate vehicles, I was driving the U-Haul. She was driving our car. In Utah, she just says, Steven, I just know it, and you can't talk me out of it. But we're not supposed to be together anymore. Just like that. One more irrational conclusion that she couldn't be talked out of. She just knew it. It's just all at once. This is how it is, and it's just got to be this way. I was just trying to be patient, wait it out, and just. I knew how good of a partner I was. I knew that she would come around, But no, she was only going to get worse. She went home to be with her family. And she, continued to have more and more of these delusions about this family member, which made her more and more uncomfortable to be around her family. So eventually she wanted her own place. And once she got her own place, it just all went downhill. Once she was completely isolated from everyone and doing whatever she wanted in secret and all that, that was really the big schism. That was the big break. She started seeing a doctor. I don't know, this quack, a fucking quack. That Adrian, I need answers. If you watch this, I'll text you later. I want this lady. Frankly, I want her gone, like that kind of gone. But what I really want is just to protect the world from a lady who suggested that she could cure Joy with her new treatment that involved hypnosis and really calculated therapy sessions. I want that lady unable to work. I want her in a soup kitchen. I don't want her ever to work again. She bears a lot of responsibility for the death of my wife and for the madness that ensued. Because she convinced Joy for a little while. Eventually, Joy finally did get to medication, and I'll get to how great that was. There was a time she improved, and it was magical. But she started seeing this counselor person, and because she was experimental and whatever, she went with Joy's delusion. She was like, hey, let's explore this repressed memory. I trust women, and I trust your experience. Let's explore this. And so her schizophrenic brain started really exploring, and it just got worse. She started crafting more and more outrageous. We separated. And guys, this is going to be a little adult or whatever. And I'm sorry, family. I'm sorry. This is awkward. We were lovers. We made a lot of love. And so when we were married, okay, get over it. Like we were married. When we separated abruptly and quickly, understand the most we ever went without sex was 3 weeks, and that was at the very end, right before we separated. Multiple times every other day at least, that was a major part of our relationship. That was a beautiful component of our love for each other. And when that faucet got all at once cranked, that was hard for me, okay? Sorry. That was incredibly, I was frothing. I was freaking out, and Joy was also. But the way that expressed itself is she began to grow attached to this young man in Austin. Joel, I'm so sorry he had to go what you went through, man. That you saw a side of your sister that, you didn't want to see. She grew incredibly attached to this guy, wanted to be with him sexually, wanted to be loved by him. She became obsessed with this guy. And because I was more interested in being her best friend than anything else, I was willing to, I let her tell me all of this. That was very hard. That was a big part of the trauma. I had to listen to my wife talk about wanting to be with someone else, insanely. And that was really painful. But my love for her and her happiness was way more than something as frivolous and dumb as sex. It was, she was rejected, and that, really freaked her out. I reached out to her saying, listen, this is too much. Frankly, I need your body. I need you. I need this part of our life together. It was too good. And she agreed, having been rejected by this guy and being in this state of like she was on fire, And so we agreed to meet up in Corpus Christi, and we just duked it out. We just had a day. Sorry family, this is awkward, but we made a day of it, and I began to see that she was more and more slipping more and more. But again, her justification, I believed it too. Like her beginning to kind of, because it wasn't pronounced. It wasn't like where it ended up. It was by increments. She was, weird. She wasn't herself, but I just began to see that she was not doing well. And during that time, getting to see her in person. But we great couple of days that we spent together. It's the last time we made love, and it was a fun time. It was a really beautiful time we spent together. It was a really great time. But she got worse and worse after I left. Because during that time, I told her, like, I love you. I want you back. And she didn't blow up on me, but she was just kind of like, hey, I thought we agreed this was just purely physical. Like, I don't want this. Like, maybe this was a bad idea if you're still like hung up or whatever. That upset me, like, all of it was hurtful, for me. But I mean, I was still in love with her, and it was hard to leave. It was hard to go back home after that. And she got more and more isolated, more and more counseling from this quack, exploring the repressed memories that weren't repressed. Hendrick family, none of that happened, okay? None of that happened. All delusional. All mental illness. All of it. Her problems stemmed from a genetic predisposition. It was passed down, and with all due respect, I think we all know from who. I love you guys. I respect you. But because this issue was never dealt with in the family, it has had devastating results. And I beg you guys to look into this. None of that happened. But because she was with a quack who was suggesting that all of it did, and getting reinforced ideas about that, and trying to do it without medication for a bit. The next time I saw Joy, she called me. She was freaking out. She was racking up thousands of dollars of credit card debt, moving from hotel to hotel, a different hotel room at a different hotel every night. She had become convinced that this family member was trying to kill her, was sending assassins. She was spying on her family unbeknownst to them. She would drive around town and follow her family members. You guys probably didn't know that. She would watch with binoculars, and she would pee in jars. I went to visit her. I stayed with her for 3 days, and I walked her back. She was just about to call that family member's place of work and inform all of his coworkers of what he was up to and what he had done her entire life to her. I walked her back from that ledge. I used her logic. I said, but Joy, that'll only make him angry. What if he's gonna, no, like, I knew this wasn't the case. I knew it was not true what was going on. Or again, I treat it like maybe 1%, the 1% maybe possibility. So I went with it a little bit, but mostly in my mind, I did not entertain it as objectively true. But I had to give it at least, if there have been secret monsters in the world before. There have been, and I had to treat her with that level of dignity. I did. I felt responsible. And also, I knew that if she lost trust with me, she would lose trust with everyone. She would be untethered from everyone. I was the last straw, and so I had to play along. I'm sorry, family. I'm so sorry, but I had to play along because I knew that if she lost trust in me, she already lost trust in you guys, and it wasn't your fault. But if she lost trust in me, then she would have no one. And I couldn't stand to think of her being alone in the world in this state. I couldn't. So I just had to. If I involved you, she would have thought I was in with you guys and against that. I was working for you guys. Please understand, please. Please understand. The next time I saw her, she was emaciated. She was a beanpole. She hadn't been eating for, like, it was 3 or 4 days since she had her last meal. I took her to Texas Roadhouse, calmed her down. We ate, and I'd never seen her in that state. It was so traumatizing to see her, just talking fast and looking off, staring off. And I stayed with her one night in the hotel, and I just held her. And I told her I loved her. And her body began shaking and convulsing. And she let out this scream, this terrible scream. And she began crying. And it was so awful. And I didn't know what was happening, but I just had to be there I just had to be there for her. It was an evil miracle. It's fucking the worst. I convinced her that if I took her to the police department and helped, and just kind of, she spoke to investigators, and I was like, look, if something did happen, give it to the police. Let them do the investigating. Stop this sleuthing. Stop all this investigative stuff. Everything's gonna be okay. But hand this over to the police, and they'll dig it up, and they'll find something. I wanted just anything to take her off the trail of trying to ruin her family member's life. And I think that helped. She was eventually institutionalized. Like I mentioned in the video before, she called real early in the morning. She was, she'd been taken in, and they were, she was trying to get me to lie for her. This medical professional I spoke with, she was so quick to just shoot it down. She was like, you know what, sir, I'm going to have to stop you right there. She's already tried to tell me 2 or 3 different things already. I know you're just trying to look out for her, but we have to institutionalize her. We have to, are concerned is that she's a threat to others and to herself. And so she went, and finally went to this place that they wouldn't, she made me her emergency contact there. So thankfully I was able to track her down and, at least talk to a medical professional about what was going on. And she was finally getting real treatment. The next time I saw her was the last New Year's we spent together. It was the last time I ever saw her in person. And it was the best. She was medicated. She was being counseled. And she was herself. After all that time, after all that torment, she was in her right mind. And we spent the day and night all together. And it wasn't romantic. It was just as best friends again. I asked her what it was like to have multiple personalities. She said it was fucking wild. One of her personalities was a man. She had 3 distinct personalities. One of them was a male. Crazy, I asked her what it was like, how she, if there's anything I could do for her. We talked about everything. And by the end of it, we forgave each other. She said she was sorry for everything. She said such terrible things to me that I knew weren't true. I knew it wasn't true. But it was so painful, some of the things she said to me. And I forgave her for that because once I knew that she wasn't in control, all my most paternal, my most romantic, my most loving, my most caring, every instinct, everything came flooding back. When we separated, I was beginning to move on, and I was like, fuck that bitch, whatever. She's just being crazy. She needs help, but she doesn't want it from me, so whatever. I got a job at SpaceX. I'm gonna fucking kill it. You know what I mean? I was like, no, I'm gonna get mine. I'm gonna do right by me. When I found out the extent of her illness and that it was only going to get worse with time, I hated myself. I felt so ashamed that I wasn't with her every step of the way, but I just didn't know. I didn't know the extent. I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't know. It would have been totally different if I knew. We forgave each other because I wasn't more involved and because she said and did terrible things to me. And we talked about finally getting divorced. But not because we didn't care about each other, but because she had saddled tens of thousands of dollars of debt. And she didn't want to leave me with that. She didn't want that to be my problem. Guys, the next New Year's, when she passed away in June. It was New Year's us. She passed away in June. That next New Year's, SpaceX guys. Hey, SpaceX guys. Now you know what I was dealing with and why after New Year's of that year, my performance at work declined, and I became a husk of myself because that New Year's with her was so magical and so wonderful. I cannot tell you how grateful I am that I got her back for just one night, for just one magical night. I got to talk to her about everything. I got to hear everything, what she went through, what it was like, how alone she felt, what she was up against, how much. I asked her what kind of tools she used to kind of help keep her tethered to reality, and how I could help hold her accountable, and how I could be. Now you guys know why I fell apart. March. So we divorced in March. $0, 0 cents. Split everything based exactly on what we wanted, and zero fighting, completely amicable, loving, caring. Cost us absolutely nothing. She was so amazing. She was that considerate that she didn't want to hurt me anymore. That was in March. And in just 3 months' time from that point, I got a phone call from her sister that there had been an accident and that Joy was involved, and that if Joy reached out to me, to please reach out to them because someone had died. Okay. 5 minutes later. I'm so sorry to tell you this. There was a mistake in the report, in the communication. Joy was the one who died. Joy was the one who died. Guys, my anniversary is May 25th. My birthday is May 31st. She died on June 5th. Her birthday is June 30th. Fuck the summer. God. It was awful. But again, she is at peace. She is no longer in any kind of torment. She got off her medication, and it went the way it was going to go without it. She went dark the last few months, so I honestly don't know where she was at. After our divorce, we talked a few times, but there's about 2 months where she just went dark, and I honestly don't know if she was still with that same quack, or if she was just maybe decided on her own to stop taking medication. I don't know. That part's a mystery to me. And again, the details of she took her own life. The voices in her head, they always threatened her with punishment. And the punishment was always, we'll make you kill yourself. Because she did not want to die. She did not. She was terrified of death. She did not want to die. I have survived this. With a grateful heart. I've not been able to talk to anyone about this to this extent, in this detail, at all. I did a little bit of counseling, but it just it didn't work out. All I can tell you is music moves me profoundly, and that has helped. It's beautiful music, beautiful, beautiful music. It lifts me. It moves me so powerfully. Art, remembering the times we had together. All I remember is the good now. I don't care about the bad times that we ever had. We never fought. We only had one fight in our marriage, and it was at the very end. I was always too damn good at communicating and listening. We talked it out every time. We never fought. We never went to bed angry. Ever. All I remember is the good. And I just needed time. I needed time to process and just grieve. Like I said, I had to grieve her twice. I had to grieve her while she was still alive and no longer herself, and I had to grieve her when she passed. It was incredibly difficult. And again, to my SpaceX guys, I'm sorry. I tried my very best not to bring any of this to my professionalism. June 30th, this most recent year, June 30th is Joy's birthday. And, I was a food service lead at SpaceX, and that night we were, as I was working night shift, it was 11 o'clock at night, and I looked at the date, and I realized it was Joy's birthday, and it hadn't occurred to me all day. It occurred to me right then. And I started to have a panic attack. So I drove up to Stargate, and I turned on some calming music, and started some mindfulness meditation. It was the night shift. I fell asleep. I fell asleep in front of Stargate. It's like the main hub where everybody comes to this kind of main hub out there. And so obviously I wouldn't have, I wasn't a bad employee. I wasn't someone who fucked around and did things on my own. And I certainly wouldn't have decided to fall asleep in front of Stargate. Like, of all places, I'd be tucked away somewhere in the dark, away from cameras and shit, A worker saw me asleep, reported me. I lost my job. I lost my job out there. Joy got me one last time. She stuck me one last time. So I've taken this time, these last few months. I had enough savings. I had enough stock. I've been fine. I don't feel lazy right now because, honestly, I worked so hard that I've been able to live just fine these many months of not working. That's how hard of a worker I know I can be. Sometimes I felt like, man, I really need to get back out there. But it's like, you know what? No, I really do need to fully get through this. And I have. It was necessary. Because work was so demanding out there. It gave me purpose, a sense of like, I'm doing something really cool. And that was a really cool feeling. But I needed time to work on myself. Joy is at rest. And that's all that matters. And I'm ready to move on. I have an urn of her ashes. I'm grateful her parents allowed me to do that. I do want to briefly say that Hendrix, I did not attend the funeral because of a conversation I had over the phone with your parents. Um, I find it very disrespectful to try to attempt to use her passing as a tactic for missionary work. I felt her torment was too severe, her life was too special to be used as any kind of opportunity to try to win me back over, to try to sell me something that I'm over. With all due respect, I love you guys, but I won't be setting foot in a church anytime soon. I just won't be. And I just found it it was disrespectful to her memory. It felt like a defilement. I was so disgusted by that. I really appreciate that you guys gave me a little beautiful urn. I will scatter her ashes at some point. I just haven't thought of where and when. I think that'll do it, guys. That's the story. That's the rub. That's what I went through. That's what I endured. That's what I had to go through. I had to bear the weight of being her only tether to the world. And I couldn't include her family because they're the ones that she was accusing. And I see it all so clearly now that all of that was a delusion. That it was purely from, it was purely hereditary. And this, when I look back, on those early signs that predated all this, I knew that confirmed it for me that this was something that she had in her before. And it wasn't something, so. With all due respect, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I just really didn't appreciate using her death as an opportunity like that. I just wanted to mourn with you. I just wanted to grieve with you. That's all. That's all. Had nothing to do with Jesus at all. Not in my mind at all. And you just needed to respect that. But you couldn't. So hopefully we can bridge that divide. Because I love you all. Hendrick family, I love every single one of you. I'll always have respect for you. And if you want a healing relationship, I know it'll take time. But if your boundaries are just, I will respect your boundaries. But just know that I am a cheerleader and a fan of every single one of you. And in honor of Joy, because she loved you guys. I'm so sorry you saw the things you saw and you dealt with the things you dealt with in her. She wasn't in her right mind. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't her fault. It was unfair. It wasn't right. But you dealt with it. You guys dealt with it. And don't feel ashamed if you told her off, or if the things she said or did were so repulsive or so, appalling to you that you felt like you needed to shut her out. It's not your fault. You had to protect yourself. There were times where I had to protect myself too. Okay. Gratitude is everything. Love is everything. And healing is everything. Oh, that's a lot, guys. But now you have the story. As always, I hope you found something beautiful in it. And yeah, I wish you all the very, very, very best. Y'all have a good one.